If you want to leave this house, you better kneel down and beg for forgiveness. A worthless woman like you has nowhere else to go. My world went dark. 7 years of bottled-up frustrations collapsed in an instant. My throat tightened, and tears began to well up. In the next moment, Josh's fist slammed into the wall. The picture frames wobbled and fell to the floor with a crash. Our wedding photo shattered, scattering shards across the floor. The memory of our happy moment from 7 years ago had ended in such a cruel way. Josh's eyes gleamed like a predator, closing in on its prey. They were filled with an unfathomable hatred, as if he wanted to destroy me. I can't take this anymore. As I tried to voice my resolve with a trembling voice, Josh roughly grabbed my arm. He dragged me toward the front door. He tightened his grip on my struggling arm, his nails digging painfully into my skin. Wait, stop! Josh smirked at my pained expression. That expression wasn't the kind husband I once knew. His mother, Linda, standing in the hallway, cried out when she saw us. Oh, I hope that you're not planning to walk out. A wife's duty is to endure. My heart shattered into pieces. If only I had been a better wife, more likable to my mother-in-law, maybe this wouldn't have happened. As I broke free from Josh's grip, my phone began ringing loudly. Then, Josh called my name. Emily. Josh and I had been married for 7 years. It felt like time had flown by, but our relationship had gradually changed over that time. We used to be so close, but now spending time together felt unbearable. I'm 35, and Josh is 36. After 7 years of marriage, we still didn't have any children, but we live with his mother, Linda. It's not that I resent Linda living in our house, but hearing her constant remarks like, when will I get to see my grandchild? And her moodiness over small things, it's becoming unbearable. Honestly, when we first got married, Josh was kind, and Linda at least tried to be considerate. But as time went on, their attitudes began to change. Josh and I both agreed that Linda was really kind, and we actually enjoyed having her around. But now, Josh doesn't even seem to care about anything. He just does whatever Linda tells him. He barely helps with any household chores. On the other hand, I work full-time and still manage to do all the housework. Cleaning, laundry, cooking dinner, it's all just expected of me. Josh and Linda don't lift a finger to help. And then there's the issue of children. When we first got married, we both talked about wanting kids, but it still hasn't happened. Josh and I both got caught up with our hectic lives, and the idea of kids kept getting pushed aside. But for Linda, that wasn't the case. She constantly said she wanted to see her grandchild and would sometimes throw jabs like, if you don't have kids soon, it'll be too late for you. Josh never said a word in response, never backed me up. He just stayed silent. It was as if he thought Linda was completely right. One day, Linda said it again. I've told you 100 times. I want to see my grandchild. What are you even doing? Her words felt like a dagger to my heart. Of course, I wished to have children of my own. But it's not that simple. Josh is busy, and I'm overwhelmed with work too. And Lisa's constant pressure only makes it harder to handle. That evening, as I served dinner, Linda spoke up again. Since you don't have kids, maybe you should help more around the house. That single comment was the last straw. Maybe I wouldn't have to if somebody else actually helped. Linda scoffed at me. That's probably why you can't have kids, because you always try and get away with doing everything halfway. Her words made my blood boil. Why do I have to put up with so much criticism when I'm trying so hard? Josh was sitting there too, but he just ate his food in silence. It was as if he had no intention of intervening in our argument. Every time I saw him act like that, I felt more and more alone. When we first got married, just being together made me happy. Now, even when we're together, I feel no warmth at all. And as if things weren't bad enough already, lately, I've started to notice that Josh's behavior is suspicious. He's been coming home later and going out alone more often on his days off. At first, I thought maybe work was just busy, but that didn't explain everything. What could make Josh so neglectful of his family? Could it be an affair? The thought made my heart feel like it stopped. Even if he was cheating, I couldn't understand why. He doesn't help around the house, and he's indifferent towards me. So why would he even get involved with another woman? If he's really having an affair, I need to know why. I started to think I needed to confront Josh with firm determination. But first, I needed proof. Nothing could start until I had undeniable evidence. One evening, he came home late from work again. I was sitting on the couch in the living room, scrolling through my phone as usual. That's when I heard the sound of Josh unlocking the door and coming inside. Hearing his footsteps, my instincts told me to be on guard. "You're late again. What happened?" Josh looked slightly flustered as he answered. "Work ran late. Sorry." His words didn't sit well with me. Work running late wasn't anything new, but this constant lateness was strange. The next day, I decided to secretly check his closet before he got home. Of course, I was looking for evidence. I never imagined I'd have to stoop to this, but I couldn't take it anymore. When I opened his drawer, I immediately found something suspicious. There was a note with a woman's name on it, and a planner showing multiple meetings with her. I was struck, speechless. My vision went dark. Realizing this was Josh's betrayal made my heart ache so much it trembled. That day, the note and planner from Josh's drawer confirmed everything. The evidence was undeniable. It was clear he was cheating, and it had been going on for a long time. Even so, I didn't have the courage to confront him with the evidence right away. It was just too painful to process or believe. Were the 7 years I spent with him all a lie? I held the evidence in my hands, wrestling with countless emotions by myself. How did it come to this? Was it my fault? My chest ached every time. I remembered Linda's words. "If you don't have kids soon, it'll be too late." She'd said it over and over. I was trying my best, so why was Josh cheating on me? Who exactly was Carol, the woman he was seeing? Every day, my heart wavered over and over again. What would happen if I confronted Josh? I was terrified of finding out why he was doing this, paralyzed and unable to act. But I knew I couldn't stay like this. I couldn't forgive his betrayal anymore. A few days passed after that. Josh started coming home even later, and his daytime messages became less frequent. He kept saying, "I'll be late tonight," but I had no way of knowing if it was true. He said it was for work, but all I had were doubts. How could he be so busy putting in so much overtime, yet his paycheck hadn't changed? No matter how much he worked, our finances stayed tight, and the rift between us only grew. Then he stopped paying for household expenses altogether. At first, I thought he had a good reason for being late with payments, but eventually he stopped paying completely. Supporting the household on just my salary was becoming impossible. Linda, living on her retirement income, couldn't contribute to the household finances either. She was never particularly helpful, and now she just complained more without offering any money. One day, I couldn't take it anymore and decided to ask Josh directly. "Why aren't you contributing to the household anymore?" Josh paused for a moment before answering. "Things are just tight right now." I wanted to believe it was only temporary. But deep down, I already knew he was hiding something. The weight of his secret grew heavier in my chest. That night, I gathered my resolve and spoke to him. "Josh, I think you're cheating on me. You've been acting so strangely lately." He said nothing and just looked at me. That silence was all the answer I needed. But then, Linda cut in. "What are you even saying? This is why you can't have kids. A wife who can't give her husband children deserves to be cheated on." Her words were cold and heartless. Hearing them made my whole body tremble. "This happened because you didn't say anything." She continued blaming me, throwing accusation after accusation. "Just leave already. You're the reason this household is falling apart." Her words left me speechless. They were just too shocking to process. Josh, who was supposed to be my family, said nothing and just stayed silent. That silence cut deeper than any words could have. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. I couldn't take it anymore. How did things get to this point? Why does my heart ache so much? I couldn't even blame myself anymore. What should I do? Should I leave or try to fix things? I couldn't find an answer no matter how hard I searched my heart. The next day, I decided to confide in a coworker. She had been a close friend for years, and I hoped talking to her would ease my burden. That sounds awful, but if he's really cheating, you need to get proof. If it's true and you're considering divorce, maybe hire a private investigator. Her words gave me the push I needed. I needed to gather proof before deciding what to do next. I thought having solid evidence was the first step toward accepting reality. I immediately hired a private investigator to look into Josh's affair. During the days of waiting, I kept questioning myself over and over. Meanwhile, I acted as though everything was normal and said nothing to Josh. Finally, the results of the investigation arrived. When I saw the report, it felt like my breath was taken away. Josh really was cheating. According to the investigation, he was regularly meeting with a woman named Carol, always at the same places. The evidence was undeniable. At that moment, I made up my mind. This marriage is over. I could never forgive Josh's betrayal. I decided to go and get divorce papers. I went to the courthouse and approached the desk to request the forms. As I asked the clerk about the necessary procedures, my phone suddenly rang. It was a call from the courthouse. I answered, and the person on the line said something unexpected. "Miss Emily, it seems your mother-in-law made a request. If you're available, perhaps you could address it?" I was a bit confused by this. Linda had something to discuss, but I didn't know what. Curious, I decided to return home first. I still didn't know how things would unfold. Before heading to the courthouse, I had already resolved to take control of my life. I couldn't continue living under Josh and Linda's control. Every day was unbearable, but I felt I needed something concrete to justify my actions. When I arrived at the courthouse, the cold air enveloped me. The quiet stillness of the building almost distracted me, but I stepped inside anyway. I entered the room I was directed to, and the clerk greeted me calmly. "Please, have a seat." Following their instructions, I sat down. The clerk quickly retrieved some documents and began to speak. Their calm, emotionless demeanor made me feel slightly uneasy. Things have already progressed further than you might think. Their words felt like they were coming from a distance. I tried to process what they meant, but my thoughts were a mess. What could have already progressed? Was my marriage already over? Desperately, I waited for them to continue. "Your divorce paperwork has already been processed." When I heard those words, it felt like my heart stopped. I gasped, unable to say anything. The words echoed in my mind over and over. The divorce paperwork has already been processed. The days I spent oblivious, just going along with everything, were already over. A suffocating feeling spread through my chest. But at the same time, I felt an unexpected sense of relief. When I thought of Josh's face, his smile, his anger, it all felt distant now. I wondered if this was how it would end, with so much left unresolved. But at this moment, I felt as though a small part of the burden I carried had been lifted. So this is how it ends. I whispered those words softly. The clerk frowned slightly at my reaction but continued organizing the documents in silence. After sitting silently for a while, I finally found the strength to stand. "Thank you." I said those words, took the papers, and left the courthouse. The air outside felt strangely fresh. As I walked, I made one firm decision in my heart. I'm leaving this house. It felt like the most obvious decision for me. I was done with everything. Josh, Linda, and even the house itself. It felt as though I was finally breaking free from everything that had tied me down. On my way home, I repeated the same thought to myself over and over. I'm leaving. I'm ending it all. My resolve was unshakable. I couldn't continue living a life dictated by others. To reclaim my life, I needed to take this step. As soon as I got home, I started packing my things. I hadn't yet decided what to take or where to go. All I knew was that leaving this house was the most important thing. My hands didn't shake as I packed. Instead, a strong determination from within drove my movements. I repeated to myself over and over that I was taking charge of my life and changing it. Then I heard the sound of the front door opening. Footsteps were coming closer to the room. When I turned around, I saw someone I didn't expect. It was Josh, back from work. He had come home unusually early. I said nothing and continued packing. "Emily, what are you doing?" "I'm leaving." In that moment, Josh's expression completely changed. A mix of shock and panic spread across his face. "What are you talking about?" I didn't answer. I just kept packing silently. "Don't tell me you're trying to start another fight." Josh looked utterly confused. "Don't do something so stupid as leaving." Those words represented everything I had endured so far. But this time it was different. "There's no way I can keep living with you." As soon as I said those words, Josh's eyes widened. He immediately tried to deny it. "What are you talking about? That's impossible." But I was ready. I showed him my phone and his face turned pale. "This is the proof." Josh's face flushed red as he panicked. "It's not what you think. Carol is just a coworker." But his eyes looked hollow, as if he had already confessed to his guilt. I could see his expression slowly crumbling. "I'm going to file for alimony. I can't forgive you." Those words left Josh visibly shaken. "Alimony?" He repeated the word, then fell silent. After a pause, he finally spoke. "Then let's split the assets." His words hit me like a punch to the chest. "There's nothing left to split, is there? You hardly have any assets to begin with." Josh's face immediately fell. Still, he tried to compose himself and said, "Then I won't agree to the divorce. I'll never let you go." His voice carried a forceful determination, an attempt to reassert control over me. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I've been the one paying for everything. You can't survive without my support, can you? Josh had no response to that. I picked up my bags and started to leave the room. Suddenly, Josh rushed toward me. "Wait, please, don't leave." He reached out and grabbed my arm. I shook his hand off. "Enough, I'm leaving." Josh couldn't handle it and raised his voice. "I won't agree to the divorce. Don't leave." I looked at him coldly and said, "But the divorce is already done." Josh's face froze in shock. "What are you talking about?" I stared at his face. Josh stood there, wide-eyed and speechless. "What?" His expression was one of utter disbelief. Remaining calm, I continued. "You're the one who drove me to this point." Josh's lips trembled, but no words came out. I mercilessly continued. "I don't expect anything from you anymore. You pushed me to the edge, but now I'm finally free." Josh averted his gaze, unable to bear my words. He covered his face with his hands. "Please, believe me, this is all a misunderstanding. Carol is just a coworker." He continued pleading desperately, tears streaming down his face. But in his eyes, I could see the panic of someone who could no longer lie. "It doesn't matter what you say now. It's too late. I'm leaving, and that's the best choice for me." At that moment, Josh collapsed onto the floor. He held his head in his hands, letting out a low groan. "Please, Emily, anything but divorce." I ignored his plea and picked up my bags again. He suddenly stood up and grabbed my arm again. Wait, please, just give me another chance. His hand was trembling, unable to grip firmly. I shook it off and said quietly, Do you understand what happens when I leave? I'm not going to live under your control anymore. Don't leave, please, I'm begging you. His voice was filled with a despair I had never seen before. Seeing him crying and begging was a stark contrast to the arrogance he had always shown. But I didn't turn back. I opened the door and walked out. Without turning back, I left him with one final word. The divorce is already done. Those were the last words we exchanged. Josh's cries no longer reached me. I closed the door behind me and left the house for good. And so I took the first step toward reclaiming my life. A few days later, I discovered that Linda had submitted the divorce papers without my knowledge. Her actions were illegal and considered forgery. Linda was investigated by the police and eventually arrested. At first, Josh tried to defend her, but as the truth came out, he turned against her actions. But his apologies came far too late for me. Carol, his affair partner, disappeared shortly after. I filed for alimony and he was forced to pay. Josh's life completely changed after that. He was left with debt from spending on Carol and paying alimony, causing his standard of living to plummet. I cut him out of my life completely and started fresh. My new apartment was small, but it felt incredibly comfortable. I never realized how happy I could be living at my own pace, without worrying about anyone else. I found that being alone was more fulfilling than I had imagined. Gradually, I began to feel hopeful about the future. From now on, my life will be something truly wonderful.
After husband's funeral, my 6-year-old stops crying. Look, Daddy's waving on the bridge. Seeing where she pointed, I grabbed her and ran.
My name is Kristen, and I'm 29 years old. I never imagined that my life would turn out this way. Ever since I was a child, I've struggled with socializing and found it difficult to make friends. This left me feeling very lonely. Even as I grew older, through elementary, middle, and high school, I couldn't change my personality. I thought my future would continue to be the same. I believed that my introverted nature was part of my core personality and that no significant change would ever occur. But then an incredible encounter changed everything. This happened during my college years. I still hadn't made any friends in college and spent most of my time alone. One day, I was sitting on a bench eating a sandwich I bought from a convenience store. Suddenly, a stranger sat down on the bench, leaving a space between us, and began eating a sandwich too. Judging by his appearance, he seemed like a fellow student. Then unexpectedly, he started speaking to me. I froze in place. I've noticed you here before. You're always eating alone. Why? His blunt question startled me so much that I nearly dropped my sandwich. Feeling overwhelmed, I ran away. I decided I couldn't use that bench anymore, which frustrated me because it was a quiet, secluded spot. Yet something about his kind tone and calm demeanor left an impression on me. Despite my irritation, I found myself back at the same bench the next day. To my surprise, he returned too and sat down. Are you okay? You ran off so suddenly yesterday that I got worried. Did I say something wrong? Oh, I just remembered I had something urgent to do. Sorry if I startled you. His friendly nature gradually put me at ease. Over time, we began talking regularly and even started hanging out outside of college. His name was Andrew, and our friendship eventually blossomed into a romantic relationship. 2 years later, after graduating, we got married. I started working in an advertising design company, a job I truly loved. Andrew, meanwhile, launched an IT startup with some college friends. His workload was immense, and his long hours meant he was often exhausted. Seeing his determination, I decided to quit my job after a year to support him fully. Are you sure about this? I don't want you to regret leaving a job you love. I'm sure. I want to help you and focus on our family. Soon after I left my job, I discovered I was pregnant. Our daughter Lily was born, and our family of 3 experienced busy but joyful days. Years passed, and Lily turned 6, starting elementary school. Andrew's company grew, and his workload finally became more manageable. Life felt stable and happy, until one day Andrew left for a week-long business trip. I'll bring back lots of souvenirs. Take care of Lily and yourself while I'm gone. Though I smiled and waved goodbye, I felt a strange sense of unease. It was the longest we'd ever been apart. Lily, however, was excited about her dad's return. I can't wait to see what Dad brings back. Do you think he'll bring me something cool? Her enthusiasm gave me strength, and I focused on keeping busy to pass the time. 3 days into Andrew's trip, I went to the grocery store. While browsing the aisles, I suddenly noticed a man who looked exactly like Andrew. My heart raced as I realized it wasn't possible. Andrew was away. The man, though resembling Andrew, had longer hair and looked thinner and pale. He wore a chilling smirk that Andrew had never displayed. Overcome with fear, I left the store and rushed home. I tried to calm down, but the encounter haunted me. That night, I called Andrew. Andrew, where are you right now? I'm at the hotel. I just got back to my room. Why? Oh, nothing. I just wanted to hear your voice. His voice reassured me, though I didn't tell him about the strange man. I convinced myself I must have been mistaken, but deep down I couldn't shake the unsettling feeling. The next day, I started to believe everything was fine, but then I received a call from a neighbor. Kristen, I'm sorry to say this, but I think you should know. Know what? What happened? Yesterday I saw Andrew with a young woman in the shopping district. They were holding hands and looked very close, almost like a couple. My heart sank. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I thought you should talk to him about it. Maybe there's some misunderstanding? I thanked her for the information, though her tone sounded more like gossip than genuine concern. The image of Andrew and the strange man I had seen at the supermarket kept flashing in my mind. Was it possible that Andrew had lied and returned without telling me, or was this man somehow connected to Andrew? When Andrew returned from his trip, Lily was ecstatic to see him.
Daddy, I missed you so much.
I missed you too, sweetheart. Here, I brought you some treats. Watching them bond made me hesitate to bring up what I had heard, but I couldn't stop the doubts from lingering in my mind. Kristen, you've been quiet. Is something wrong? No, I'm fine, just tired. Days turned into weeks and I couldn't shake the growing tension between us. Then out of nowhere, tragedy struck. Andrew collapsed at work and was rushed to the hospital. He had suffered a heart attack and passed away before I could even reach him. The loss was devastating. Lily didn't fully understand what had happened.
Is Daddy on another long trip? When will he come back?
Her innocent question broke my heart, and I promised myself to raise her well in Andrew's memory. Life without Andrew was a struggle, but I managed to find work at a food processing plant. It was tiring, but seeing Lily's smile made it all worthwhile. Months later, while walking home from the park, Lily suddenly pointed at someone across the bridge.
Mommy, it's Daddy. Daddy's over there.
My blood ran cold. Standing on the other side of the bridge was the man I had seen before, the one who looked just like Andrew. His hair was even longer now, and his sinister smile sent shivers down my spine.
Daddy's back!
She started to run toward him, but I grabbed her arm. No, that's not your father. Stay with me. I pulled her away and ran home as fast as I could. Lily protested, confused by my reaction, but I couldn't explain it in the moment. When we got home, I told Lily firmly, that man is not your father. If you ever see him again, run away as fast as you can. Promise me, Lily.
Okay, Mommy, but he looked so much like Daddy.
Days passed, and Lily began mentioning seeing Daddy more frequently. It was then I realized I couldn't handle this alone anymore. I finally called my father and told him everything. Kristen, why didn't you tell me earlier? You always wait until it's unbearable before asking for help. I'm sorry, Dad. I just didn't know what to do. We'll figure this out. First, let's investigate Andrew's family history. There may be a connection. With my father's help, we hired a private investigator to look into Andrew's past. 2 weeks later, the investigator called with shocking news. Andrew had an identical twin brother named Lucas. I was stunned. Lucas had a troubled past and was estranged from the family. According to the investigator, Lucas harbored deep resentment toward Andrew. Lucas had a history of instability and had been arrested for assaulting Andrew years ago. The investigator's findings confirmed that the man we'd seen was indeed Lucas. Kristen, I think it's best if you and Lily stay with us for a while. Lucas seems dangerous. The next day, Lily and I packed our things and moved in with my parents. Moving in with my parents brought a sense of safety, but I couldn't shake the unease of knowing Lucas was out there. Lily adjusted quickly and joined the company of her grandparents, but she occasionally asked about Daddy.
Mommy, will Daddy ever come home?
No, sweetheart. Daddy is in heaven now. Remember what we talked about?
But the man we saw, he looked so much like Daddy.
Her words sent a chill through me. Her weeks passed without any sign of Lucas, and I began to hope we could move on with our lives. But one evening, as we returned home from a walk, I saw him. Lucas was standing in the driveway, staring at us with that same sinister smile. Lily, go inside now. My father stepped out of the house, his face set in a grim expression. What are you doing here? You need to leave. I'm not going anywhere until I finish what I came here to do. Leave us alone. We have nothing to do with you. Lucas laughed, a chilling sound that sent shivers down my spine. Oh, but you do. You're the reason my brother had everything, aren't you? The perfect family, the perfect life. My father moved to stand between Lucas and me, his stance protective. I'm calling the police. Go ahead, but this isn't over. He walked away slowly, disappearing into the shadows. My father immediately called the police and filed a report. A few days later, the police informed us they had arrested Lucas. Lucas was found near your property carrying a weapon. He's being charged with trespassing and possession of a dangerous item. Relief flooded through me, but I knew it wasn't the end of our troubles. Lucas's arrest was just the beginning of a legal process that could take months. In the meantime, I focused on building a stable life for Lily. I started working at a local cafe where the owner, a kind older man, welcomed me warmly. You're doing great here, Kristen. Customers love you. Lily, too, began to find happiness again. She made new friends at school and often brought them home to play. Slowly but surely, life started to feel normal again. I still thought of Andrew every day, but I took comfort in knowing he would be proud of how far we had come. As for Lucas, he was sentenced to a lengthy prison term for his actions. The court also ordered him to stay away from us once he was released. It wasn't the ending I had envisioned for our family, but it was a chance for a new beginning. Now I look up at the sky every evening, imagining Andrew watching over us. I promised to live the life he would have wanted for us, full of love, laughter, and hope. No matter what challenges come our way, I know we'll face them together. Because in the end, family is what gives us strength. Where are you? There's an urgent matter I need to talk to you about. Sorry, Amy. It's an emergency. I'll call you back later. Before I could say another word, Mike cut me off and abruptly ended the call. Sitting in the parking lot outside the soccer stadium, I let out a heavy sigh. My eyes were drawn to a familiar car in front of me. The make, model, and even the bumper stickers all confirmed it was Mike's car. If this is an emergency, why is he here at a soccer stadium? A sense of unease began to creep into my chest. I needed to find out the truth for myself. I walked toward the bleachers, and what I saw shocked me to my core. Mike was sitting there with an unfamiliar woman and a young child. They were sitting together, cheering enthusiastically as if they were a family. Their faces were briefly displayed on the stadium's large screen, smiling and laughing. I quietly approached and sat down in the seat right next to them. Thanks for saving us such great seats. Mike's face twisted in shock and horror as he turned to look at me. But this was only the beginning. My name is Amy. Mike and I have been married for 10 years. We have 2 children, our eldest son Ryan and our younger daughter Astrid. We've lived a busy but happy life together. Or at least, I thought so. Things began to change shortly after Ryan was born. Mike's work required him to relocate temporarily for a solo assignment. What should we do? Ryan's still so young. Should we move together? But with your job and the support of your family nearby, staying here might be easier. How about I go by myself for now? I'll come back every weekend. It was true. Having my parents nearby made raising a child more manageable, so I agreed to his plan. During the week, I handled everything on my own, work, taking Ryan to daycare, and all the household chores. At first, I was overwhelmed by anxiety, but thanks to the support of my mother and close friends, I managed to keep things under control. When Mike returned on weekends, I felt a sense of relief having the family together again. Dad, welcome home. Hey, buddy. Were you good this week? I was super good. Seeing Ryan's excitement reminded me that being together as a family was the most important thing. But when Astrid was born, our lives became even busier. Managing Ryan's needs alongside caring for a newborn was far from easy. Adding my job to the mix only made it more challenging. Amy, you seem really tired lately. Are you okay? Mike's concern was comforting at first, but over time his support became less genuine, merely surface-level gestures. Of course I'm tired, but who else is going to do everything? My tone carried a hint of sarcasm. I'll help out on the weekends, so don't overdo it. Weekends aren't enough, Mike. My sharp response caught him off guard, and he said nothing more. By the time Ryan joined a soccer team in 3rd grade, life had become even more hectic. Weekends were filled with soccer practices and games, cheering alongside Astrid. Afterward, we'd usually go out for dinner. Mom, we won today. That's amazing, Ryan. I'm so proud of you. Watching my son's growth became my source of strength. Meanwhile, Mike's visits home became more sporadic and detached. I wanted to discuss Ryan's school situation, but I'm sorry, Amy, I've been swamped with overtime. I just need some sleep. Sure, whatever. My words dripped with bitterness. Lately, it feels like you're only coming home to sleep, not to be with us. Mike's response was just a sheepish expression. By now, I had grown used to handling everything on my own. Ironically, life without Mike during the week was more comfortable. I could manage the household on my terms with no interruptions or unnecessary tension. On weekends, however, I began to feel a growing sense of suffocation. Amy, where's my shirt? Look for it yourself. I'm busy too. Even trivial exchanges like these began to feel burdensome. Maybe the old saying is true. A husband's absence makes life easier. When I shared this thought with my mother, she chuckled knowingly. Perhaps it's because he's away that you're finding time for yourself. She wasn't wrong. When Mike was away, I had the freedom to focus on everything at my own pace. Yet we still had moments as a family, like when Mike occasionally came to Ryan's soccer games. I'll try to make it to the next match. Sure, if you can. But my growing frustrations never faded completely. When Mike promised to attend one of Ryan's matches, I left home early with Ryan and Astrid. Give it your all today, Ryan. Dad's excited to see you play.
I will. Just watch me win.
We arrived at the stadium and the match began. But as the game neared its end, Mike was nowhere to be seen. I saw Ryan glancing at the crowd, searching for his father. My chest tightened at the sight. Despite the team's victory, Ryan looked disappointed. Ryan, you were amazing out there. I was so moved.
But Dad didn't come.
I had no response for his quiet remark. Walking home, holding Astrid's hand and carrying her in my arms, I felt something inside me break. When we got home, Mike was lying on the couch, scrolling through his phone. Mike, what happened to Ryan's game? You said you'd come. Sorry, I was too tired. I'll definitely go next time. Next time? Do you have any idea how much Ryan was looking forward to today? Mike muttered excuses, but my irritation only grew. I carried on with my busy life as always, but something has shifted. Your promises mean nothing anymore, Mike. Ryan and Astrid deserve better than this. I said I'll make it next time, okay? Why are you blowing this out of proportion? Next time isn't enough. You keep saying it, but it never happens. As I turned away from him, I felt an overwhelming sense of isolation. Time passed, and Ryan entered middle school, while Astrid was now in 5th grade. Despite the chaos of my life, I found joy in watching my children grow. Mike, however, grew more distant, sometimes going weeks without coming home. His absences no longer mattered as much to me. One day, Astrid innocently suggested something that would shift our family dynamic.
Mom, why don't we surprise Dad for his birthday? We could go visit him.
A surprise visit? That could be nice. Ryan joined the conversation, his excitement mirroring Astrid's. That's a great idea. Let's plan something awesome. Their enthusiasm was infectious, so I checked Mike's schedule to make sure it would work. Mike, what's your plan this weekend? Are you free? Yeah, I'm off. Why? Oh, just curious, that's all. I ended the call without revealing our plans, leaving the children to eagerly finalize the details. On the day of the surprise, we packed our things and drove to Mike's apartment. Astrid was bursting with excitement, clutching a small gift she had chosen for her father. Ryan held a handwritten card, his expression mixed with nerves and anticipation. Ready, you two? Let's make this special for your dad. Ready! I parked the car near Mike's apartment and watched as the kids headed inside. From my spot, I could see Mike step out of the building. My heart sank as I watched him check his phone and then approach a pastel-colored car. Without hesitation, he climbed into the passenger seat. A woman was behind the wheel and a child sat in the back seat. My chest tightened and my thoughts raced. What is this? Who are they? Why is Mike with them? I stayed rooted to the spot, my emotions battling between anger and confusion. When Ryan and Astrid returned, their faces were heavy with disappointment. Dad wasn't there. We brought presents and everything. I'm sorry, kids. Let's not let this ruin our day. How about we go watch a soccer game instead? Really? That sounds awesome. As we drove to the stadium, I did my best to mask my turmoil, but inside, anger and suspicion churned, refusing to be ignored. At the stadium, my worst fears were confirmed. From the bleachers, I saw Mike sitting with the same woman and child from earlier. They cheered together, looking every bit like a happy family. My anger boiled over, but I couldn't let the children see me lose control. Instead, I quietly planned my next move, knowing I couldn't let this betrayal go unaddressed. Kids, stay here for a moment. I'll be right back. My steps were firm and deliberate as I approached Mike's seat. So, this is the emergency work you mentioned. Mike turned to me, his face pale and panicked. Amy, what are you doing here? It's not what it looks like. His excuses only fueled my resolve. This confrontation was far from over. Amy, listen, you've got the wrong idea. This isn't what it looks like. Oh, really? Because it looks exactly like what I think it is. Care to explain? Mike's face flushed as he struggled to find words. Just then, the woman returned with a child, both of them approaching Mike with familiarity. Is everything okay? Who's this? The child, a young boy around Astrid's age, ran to Mike and tugged on his sleeve.
Daddy, can we get more snacks now?
Astrid and Ryan, who had been watching from a distance, approached slowly, their faces filled with confusion and hurt. Daddy? Who is this boy? Why is he calling you that? Yeah, Dad. What's going on? Explain yourself. Mike froze, his eyes darting between me, the woman, the boy, and our children. It's complicated. I can explain. Oh, please do. We're all ears. Mike hesitated, clearly overwhelmed. The woman looked between all of us, her expression growing wary. Mike, what's going on? You told me your family situation was already settled. You said you were separated and that you didn't have kids. Astrid gasped, and Ryan clenched his fists, his face darkening with anger. You told her what? That we don't exist? Is that how little we mean to you? Mike stammered, trying to defend himself, but his words came out incoherent. No, that's not... I didn't mean it like that. Enough, Mike. Stop lying. You've been deceiving everyone here, and it's time to own up to it. Mike's shoulders slumped as he seemed to realize there was no way out of this mess. The woman turned to Mike, her voice shaking with anger. 3 years, Mike. 3 years you've been lying to me. To us? 3 years? So this has been going on since Astrid was in kindergarten. Impressive. Ryan stepped forward, his voice trembling with both fury and pain. Did you ever think about how we waited for you? How much we wanted you to be with us? Did that mean nothing to you? Mike opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked helpless, defeated. We're done, Mike. You've betrayed this family for the last time. I turned to Astrid and Ryan, taking their hands firmly in mine. Come on, kids. We're leaving. We don't need this man in our lives anymore. Astrid looked up at me with tears in her eyes, but nodded. Ryan stared at Mike one last time before turning away. As we walked away, I heard the woman confronting Mike, her voice rising in anger, but I didn't look back. There was nothing left to say. Back in the car, Astrid broke the silence, her voice soft but resolute. Mom, we don't need Dad anymore. We'll be okay without him, right? That's right, Astrid. We'll be okay. We have each other, and that's all we need. Ryan nodded, his voice steady despite the pain in his eyes. We'll take care of each other, Mom. We don't need him anymore. Tears stung my eyes, but I smiled, filled with a newfound sense of determination. Thank you, both of you. We'll move forward together as a family. As I drove away from the stadium, I felt a weight lifting, replaced by the courage to start anew. The following days passed in a blur as I began making preparations to sever ties with Mike for good. I contacted a lawyer to begin the divorce process, making sure everything was in order for Astrid and Ryan's future. Meanwhile, news of Mike's affair spread quickly after the soccer game incident. The giant banner I displayed during the match became a viral sensation on social media, bringing attention to Mike's double life. Mike's reputation at work took a massive hit, and whispers about his unfaithfulness circulated in his office. Unable to face the fallout, Mike eventually resigned from his job. His relationship with the other woman also crumbled under the weight of the scandal. She cut ties with him, leaving him completely isolated. During this time, my lawyer efficiently handled the legal aspects of the divorce. Mike, having lost both his career and his affair partner, lacked the resources to put up a fight. We finalized the divorce with terms that included appropriate child support and alimony payments. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of closure. Mom, does this mean it's just the 3 of us now? That's right, Astrid. Just us 3. But that's all we need, isn't it? Yeah, we're a team. We'll figure things out together. I hugged both of them tightly, grateful for their resilience and strength. Life didn't immediately become easier, but it was different. Without Mike's shadow looming over us, the house felt lighter. I focused on my work and spent more time with Astrid and Ryan, cherishing every moment we had together. Slowly but surely, we began building a new routine, a life free from lies and betrayal. One quiet evening, as the kids slept, I sat alone in the living room reflecting on everything that had happened. The pain of betrayal still lingered, but it no longer defined me. Instead, I felt a sense of pride for standing up for myself and my children. Our future was ours to shape, and I knew we would be okay. The memory of the banner at the soccer match became a symbol of my strength, a reminder that I had the power to fight for what truly mattered. From that moment on, I vowed to move forward with hope and determination. Together, Astrid, Ryan, and I would create a life filled with love, honesty, and laughter. And that was more than enough.
Father's watch missing. Husband. Gave it away. Me, we're done. Next day, our house was on fire.
It was just a watch. That's what my husband said when he gave it to his sister. Your sister wanted it, so I just gave it to her. That's only natural, isn't it? My husband smirked at me. His lips curled at the edges. His eyes were cold, as if I were something beneath his notice. A sharp pain shot through my chest. It felt as if my heart was being crushed by a giant hand. That watch was a cherished keepsake. My father entrusted it to me with trembling hands during his final days. It was a gift from my mother to my father. She had worked overtime for months to afford it. It was a symbol of her deep love for him. Yet my husband dismissed it so easily. He trampled over my heart without hesitation. The atmosphere in the living room froze instantly. The rays of the evening sun shone into the room. They illuminated my husband's cold face with an eerie light. What's with that look? My sister's happy, isn't she? It's obvious she'd make better use of it than a worthless woman like you. He shoved his smartphone in front of me. It displayed a picture of his sister's slender wrist adorned with my father's watch. The last connection to my father was being taken from me in this form. It deepened the cracks in my heart. But in this house, no one would understand my feelings. I bit my lip to hold back the tears welling up in my eyes. I asked, my voice trembling. Why? Why would you give it to her without even consulting me? Why would I need to ask for permission? My sister wanted it, so I gave it to her. Why should I care about your feelings? He sighed, his tone laced with irritation. In that moment, something within me changed irrevocably. For 10 years, I had endured my husband's behavior. But this was the final straw. I understand. I quietly stood up and looked at the wedding ring on my finger. My husband looked at me with a puzzled expression. Just then, I heard a small sound coming from upstairs. It was as if the house itself was watching me make my decision. I realized this was my moment. My name is Sarah. I'm a 32-year-old stay-at-home mom. I live with my husband, Matthew, and our 8-year-old daughter, Lily. From the outside, our family seems perfect. We live in a charming house with white walls and a small garden blooming with seasonal flowers. Neighbors often compliment the well-maintained appearance of our home. But inside, I carry an unshakable sense of emptiness. This void stems from the loss of my father a few years ago. My childhood home was a unique one. My mother, Hannah, was a brilliant lawyer who dedicated herself entirely to her career. She was always surrounded by piles of legal documents and rushed phone calls. Many times I watched her leave the house in a hurry, briefcase in hand. Her work often kept her away for days on end. In her absence, it was my father who held the household together. He was my entire world. He filled the house with warmth and joy, compensating for my mother's absence. Whenever I came home from school, the smell of something delicious cooking in the kitchen greeted me. And so did his voice, saying, "Welcome back." His kindness made me feel deeply loved. Whenever my mother's harsh words hurt me, he would lean close and whisper, "Don't worry, you're perfect just the way you are." His words were a shield for my heart. But a few years ago, my father passed away suddenly. My world collapsed, and life lost its color. On the day of his funeral, I stared at myself in mourning clothes in the mirror. That's when the reality hit me. I would never see my father again. Since his passing, his memory became the pillar that supported me. My relationship with my mother had always been complex. I admired her for her brilliance in courtrooms and boardrooms. Watching her argue her cases with calm confidence left me in awe. Yet at home, her words often felt like daggers. You need to be more independent. set goals, and work hard to achieve them. Each critique made me feel as though I was being rejected. As a child, I felt a growing distance between us. It wasn't until much later, after marriage and becoming a mother myself, that I understood her intentions. Beneath her sharp words was a desire for me to be strong and resilient, like her. Still, the wounds she left behind didn't fully heal. This was why I promised myself that my own daughter would never feel unloved or overlooked. After graduating from college, I pursued a steady job at a regular company. I dreamed of building a warm, loving family. That's when I met Matthew, a senior colleague. He was calm and gentle, and his kind smile drew me in. After dating for a year, we got married and started our life together. When Lily was born, I left my job to focus on raising her. My father's watch became a symbol of his presence in my life. It was a gift from my mother to my father on their anniversary. To me, it represented the bond that held our family together. Every time I held the watch, I felt my father's presence. I only wore it on special occasions like Lily's first day of school. That morning, as I adjusted my new suit and strapped on the watch, memories of my father flooded back. His smile appeared vividly in my mind, and tears filled my eyes. On normal days, I kept it safely tucked away in a drawer. It was my treasure, a connection to the man who taught me how to love and be loved. One quiet afternoon, as I was cleaning the house while keeping an eye on Lily, I thought of the watch. I opened the drawer to make sure it was still there. The smooth, cool touch of the metal and the gleam of its dial brought a sense of comfort. Each time I held it, I whispered a promise to my father. I want to be the kind of parent to Lily that you were to me. Despite the sense of loss that lingered in my heart, I continued to cherish everyday life. But subtle cracks had begun to form in my relationship with Matthew. Matthew's behavior had been increasingly troubling, though I tried to dismiss it at first. His attachment to his younger sister, Claire, seemed excessive at times. Matthew grew up as an only child for 10 years before Claire was born. When she arrived, his parents' attention shifted entirely to her. It must have felt like a betrayal to him. Yet instead of resenting her, he became overly protective and doting. Claire still lived at home with their parents, bouncing between jobs. When we were deciding where to build our home, Matthew insisted we live close to his parents' house. He wouldn't budge on the matter. I didn't have strong preferences about the location, so I reluctantly agreed. Matthew's parents even offered to help us financially with the house. As a result, our new home was just a 10-minute drive from his parents. After we moved in, Matthew began stopping by his parents' house almost daily. He would visit Claire on his way home from work, sometimes for just a short chat. I didn't think much of it at first since it didn't disrupt our routine, but as time went on, it began to bother me. "Don't you think you're visiting your parents too often?" I asked him cautiously one evening. Matthew shrugged it off with a laugh. "What can I say? Claire is my little sister, I can't help it." His dismissive response felt like a cold knife to my heart. I realized then that Lily and I would always come second to Claire. Before we married, I noticed small signs of his attachment to her, but I convinced myself it was just a close sibling relationship. Living with him, however, turned my unease into a deeper, unsettling feeling. Thoughts of divorce occasionally crossed my mind. I even went so far as to pick up divorce papers from City Hall once. But for Lily's sake and because of financial uncertainties, I hesitated. Meanwhile, Claire's behavior only added to my frustrations. During visits to my in-laws, she would smile warmly on the surface, yet her eyes never matched her friendly demeanor. When Matthew gave Lily a pat on the head or chatted with me, Claire would scowl slightly. At first, I thought I was imagining things, but over time, her true feelings became undeniable. There was one incident I could never forget. It happened when Lily was still very young. We were attending a casual family dinner at Matthew's parents' home. While Matthew played with Lily in the living room, I helped Claire and his mother in the kitchen. I noticed Claire walk over to Lily and crouch down beside her. "You know, the only reason you're here is because I said your dad should get married." Her tone was light, but Lily's face fell. Claire continued speaking. "So remember, you're here thanks to me. Understand?" My hands froze in the middle of washing a dish. From across the room, I saw Lily's confused in her expression. Although Claire's voice was soft and gentle, there was a sharp edge hidden beneath it.
Mom.
Lily's small voice called out to me. Quickly drying my hands, I rushed over to her side. She was standing there, staring at Claire with wide, teary eyes. What's wrong, sweetheart? I asked, kneeling to her level. Lily shook her head, trying to hold back tears, but the sadness in her gaze was unmistakable. My heart burned with anger, but I restrained myself. Confronting Claire in front of Lily would only make things worse. Instead, I gently placed a hand on Lily's shoulder. It's okay, sweetie. Let's go. That night, as we drove home, I softly asked Lily what Claire had said to her. Did Aunt Claire say something to upset you? Lily hesitated before speaking in a whisper.
She said I'm only here because of her.
Her voice trembled, and it felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I hated the thought of anyone making my daughter feel small or insignificant. From that day forward, my distrust of Claire solidified into a certainty. Claire's behavior wasn't just a one-time issue. Her subtle manipulations and unsettling demeanor became more frequent over time, and Matthew's unwavering defense of her only deepened my frustration. He refused to see any fault in her actions. Every time I brought up my concerns, he brushed them aside. Claire would never do anything to hurt anyone. You're imagining things. His dismissive attitude left me feeling isolated and unheard. Despite these challenges, I focused on maintaining a sense of normalcy for Lily. I poured my energy into creating happy memories for her, shielding her as much as I could, but the cracks in our family dynamic continued to widen. The tipping point came one morning as I prepared for a rare family outing. Matthew's workplace was hosting a family-friendly gathering, and we had all been invited. It felt like a chance to step out of the tension at home and enjoy some quality time together. I helped Lily pick out a pretty dress, and her excitement was contagious.
Mom, do you think I'll look like a princess?
Of course, sweetheart. You'll be the most beautiful princess there. Her eyes sparkled with joy, and I couldn't help but smile. As the morning progressed, I decided to wear my father's watch for the occasion. It was a way to keep his memory close during special moments. But when I opened the drawer where I always kept it, the watch was gone. My heart sank, and a wave of panic washed over me. I searched frantically through every drawer and shelf, but it was nowhere to be found. Desperation took hold as I ransacked the room, hoping it had simply been misplaced. When my efforts turned up nothing, I turned to Matthew. Matthew, have you seen my father's watch? He barely looked up from his phone before responding nonchalantly. Oh, that? I gave it to Claire. His words hit me like a slap in the face. You what? She liked it and said it suited her. You weren't using it anyway. The casualness of his tone made my blood boil. He spoke as if he had the right to give away something so deeply meaningful to me. That watch wasn't yours to give. Do you have any idea how much it means to me? Relax, it's just a watch. Claire will take good care of it. His indifference shattered something inside me. For years I had endured his dismissive attitude and the constant prioritization of Claire over Lily and me. But this was the final straw. Tears welled up in my eyes as I clenched my fists. Lily, sensing my distress, walked over and gently held my hand.
Mom, are you okay?
Her small, worried voice brought me back to the moment. I knelt down and hugged her tightly, letting her warmth ground me. Yes, sweetie, everything's going to be okay. But deep down, I knew things were far from okay. That night, as I lay awake beside Lily, I made a decision. I could no longer tolerate Matthew's disregard for my feelings and the damage it was causing to our family. The next morning, I confronted him with a calm yet resolute voice. Matthew, I want a divorce. He froze, clearly not expecting those words. Are you serious? I nodded firmly. I've endured enough, and I can't keep living like this. Lily and I deserve better. He tried to laugh it off, but I stood my ground. You can't survive without me. You're just a housewife. His words stung, but Lily's voice cut through the tension.
Mom can do anything. She doesn't need you.
Her brave declaration filled me with a renewed sense of strength. She's right. I'll figure it out, and we'll be fine. I handed him the signed divorce papers. For the first time, I saw genuine uncertainty on his face. Reluctantly, he signed them, muttering under his breath, Don't come crying to me when you regret this. Oh, I won't. Trust me, I feel relieved. With Lily by my side, I left the house and went to my mother's home for support. My mother, Margaret, welcomed us with open arms. Of course, you can stay as long as you need. This is your home too. Her warmth and understanding were a balm to my frayed nerves. Lily quickly settled in, her laughter filling the once quiet home. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of safety and belonging. Over the following days, I began piecing my life back together. With my mother's encouragement, I started applying for jobs. It wasn't easy re-entering the workforce after so many years, but I was determined. Mother's connections led me to a job at a local law firm as an administrative assistant. It was the same firm where she had worked before retiring. My first day was nerve-wracking, but the staff was welcoming. As the week passed, I found a rhythm in balancing work and parenting. Lily adjusted well to her new routine, thriving under her grandmother's care. One day during lunch break, an unexpected encounter changed everything. As I walked into the firm's lounge, I heard a familiar voice.
Oh, look who it is. Hello, Sarah.
I froze in place, my heart sinking. Claire stood before me, her usual confident smirk plastered across her face. She was dressed impeccably, her designer bag dangling casually from her arm. My shock turned into disbelief as she extended a hand toward me. Guess what? I just joined the team here. Isn't that wonderful? Her saccharine tone was a stark contrast to the cold look in her eyes. Claire, why are you here? Oh, don't worry, I'm just here to work, nothing personal. But the way her gaze lingered on me made it clear that her presence was anything but coincidental. Over the next few weeks, her behavior became increasingly troubling. She excelled at charming our colleagues, effortlessly becoming the center of attention. Meanwhile, she began spreading rumors about me in the office. At first, they were subtle. Comments about how I only got the job because of my mother's influence. Then, they escalated. Whispers of alleged incompetence and fabricated mistakes started to circulate. One afternoon, I overheard her speaking to a coworker. Poor Sarah. It must be hard juggling work and her personal issues. Her tone feigned concern, but her words were laced with malice. That evening, I confided in Mother. Mom, I don't know what to do. She's trying to ruin me. You need to document everything, Sarah. Don't let her intimidate you. Following her advice, I began keeping a detailed record of Claire's actions. I also started recording conversations whenever possible. Weeks later, the situation reached a boiling point. A coworker approached me with a look of concern. Sarah, I don't want to alarm you, but I overheard Claire saying some questionable things about you. What did she say? She's been insinuating that you were involved in something unethical at your previous job. My blood ran cold as I realized how far she was willing to go. Armed with the evidence I had collected, I decided it was time to confront her. During a lunch break, I asked her to meet me in an empty conference room. Claire, we need to talk. About what, dear? Her feigned innocence only fueled my resolve. I know what you've been doing, and I have proof. I placed my phone on the table and played the recordings. Her confident demeanor faltered as her own voice echoed through the room. You can't prove anything. I think the management might feel differently. Her eyes narrowed, and for a moment I saw a flicker of fear. Claire's bravado quickly dissolved as the gravity of the situation set in. Fine, what do you want? What I want is for you to stop this nonsense. No more lies, no more rumors. And if you can't manage that, I'll have no choice but to escalate this to HR. Claire clenching her jaw, her fists tightening by her sides. You wouldn't dare. Try me. I stood my ground, refusing to be intimidated any longer. After a tense silence, she scoffed and stormed out of the room. That evening, I met with Mother to recount what had happened. She backed down, but I don't trust her. I think she's just biding her time. Then it's time to take the next step. I'll help you draft a formal report. HR needs to know everything. Over the next few days, we meticulously compiled the evidence. Emails, recordings, and statements from supportive coworkers formed a compelling case. When I submitted the report, HR took immediate action. Claire was called in for a meeting and confronted with the evidence. Shortly after, she was suspended pending further investigation. The news spread quickly throughout the office. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of relief. My mother and I celebrated that evening with Lily over a simple dinner. Mommy, you're smiling again. That's because everything is going to be okay now. Her innocent joy reminded me of what truly mattered. Several weeks later, HR concluded their investigation. Claire was officially terminated for her misconduct. She left the firm in disgrace, but not before trying to spin a final sob story to our colleagues. Despite her attempts, the truth was clear to everyone. With Claire gone, the atmosphere at work improved dramatically. My colleagues, once hesitant, began to show their support openly. We're glad you stayed strong, Sarah. You didn't deserve any of that. Thank you. That means a lot. As the dust settled, I found myself reflecting on the journey. The trials I have faced had been daunting, but they had also made me stronger. With Mother and Lily by my side, I felt more resilient than ever. I resolved to move forward, focusing on building a brighter future for Lily and myself. Together, we were unstoppable.
Cheating husband leaves caregiver wife. My new wife will handle it from here. Her response left him speechless.
And don't worry, it's fine. She has no idea about us. Trust me. One morning, I overheard my husband talking to someone. And from what I could make out from his end, the person on the other end of the phone conversation was a woman. He kept talking, completely off guard. Maybe he felt guilty, because he kept glancing toward where I was sleeping, as if I were an intrusion to his secret. My wife will probably wake up soon. Good night. With that, he hung up and casually headed to the bathroom as if nothing had happened. I felt all the strength leave my body and collapsed to the floor. But one thing was clear. He was having an affair. And this was just the beginning of his blatant behavior. My name is Emily Cooper. I'm a 30-year-old housewife. But becoming a housewife wasn't exactly my choice. It happened because my husband, John, asked me to take care of his aging parents. John is 2 years older than me and works as a real estate agent in Chicago. His office is downtown, and he commutes to a sleek, high-rise building every day. Before we got married, I worked as a nurse. Not just any nurse. I was a surgical nurse in a bustling hospital, constantly on my feet. I met my husband at a matchmaking event, and we were married within a year. Later, I realized he had only been looking for someone who could take care of his parents. Sorry, Emily, but I need you to quit your job. I remember we had a huge fight when he suddenly told me this. Why do I have to quit my job? When I protested, he responded without the slightest hint of remorse. My parents can't manage living on their own anymore. It's a wife's duty to take care of her in-laws. Isn't that what you signed up for? The way John rattled off those words so effortlessly left me stunned and unable to respond. This happened on what was supposed to be our 1-month wedding anniversary. In front of us was a cake topped with fresh strawberries and a bottle of expensive champagne. A beautifully roasted chicken, seasoned with aromatic herbs, sat on the table, ready to be carved. But we never even had the chance to share that meal. Do you know how hard it was to find a nurse to marry? My ex-wife was a useless office worker. She couldn't do a thing. He didn't even wait for my response before disappearing into the bedroom. I knew John was bisexual. But at the time, I was desperate to get married and couldn't bear the thought of letting him slip away. He was the one who approached me, but I have to admit, I found him quite attractive. You could say that I was drawn to his looks. My job as a nurse left me with almost no opportunities to meet people. So when someone like John showed interest in me at that event, I couldn't pass up the chance. Looking back now, it was a huge mistake. John didn't just badmouth his ex. He clearly didn't see me as a wife either. To him, I was just a living caregiver for his parents. In short, I was being used. Why did I even bother preparing this feast? I thought to myself. I felt pathetic for getting excited about the evening, even though we were still newlyweds. With no energy to reheat the now cold chicken, I spent our anniversary alone in silence. It wasn't easy to tell my supervisor I was quitting, but it needed to be done sooner or later since John was so unwilling to hear me out. The hospital was already short-staffed, and I knew my leaving would only make things harder for my team. But in the end, I handed in my resignation and left the hospital a month later. When I got home that day, John was waiting for me with a cake. Great job, Emily. This is my way of saying thanks. The cake was from Gourmet by Lawrence, a boutique dessert shop known for its expensive treats. It was the kind of cake you'd only find in high-end stores. What's this supposed to mean? This was the same man who ignored our anniversary, now gleefully celebrating the fact that I had quit my job. To me, the cake felt less like a gift and more like a mockery. What do you mean? It's a little celebration for your resignment. Now, you'll have all the time in the world to take care of my parents since you won't be working anymore. Hearing John say that so casually, I felt deeply disappointed rather than angry. I'm not in the mood for cake. I hope I made my feelings clear. It was only natural. I had quit my job, inconveniencing my colleagues, and here was John thinking he could make it all better with a cake. John immediately reacted with irritation. After everything I've done for you, this is how you react? I already ate. Everyone at work brought me farewell treats. I lied without thinking. The thought of arguing with him any further just felt exhausting. John seemed to accept the excuse and began putting the cake in the fridge. Watching him, I was overcome by a deep sense of emptiness. Now, you can fully focus on taking care of my parents. Even as John smiled contentedly, my heart sank further into despair. The next day marked the official start of my caregiving duties. John's parents lived about 20 minutes away in a nearby suburb. They used to have a professional caregiver, but John had canceled the service to save money. As soon as I entered their home, a strong odor hit me. Trash was piled up, and judging by the smell, some of it included used adult diapers. First, I need to change the diapers. I headed to the room where John's parents were resting. It hit me in that moment. This was my new reality as a stay-at-home caregiver. Hi, Paul. Hi, Grace. How are you feeling today? Oh, Emily, it's so nice of you to come. So, you're the next one, huh? Let's see how long you last. Oh, Paul, don't be rude. Grace was kind, but Paul's attitude was cold, likely from the stress of his situation. Their care needs weren't extreme, but they still required consistent help. Their need for care was the result of an unfortunate accident, a fall down the stairs. Grace had slipped, and Paul had tried to catch her, but they both ended up tumbling down. As a result, both suffered partial paralysis. Paul's harsh tone didn't faze me. I've dealt with patients in the past who were much ruder than him. I leaned on my nursing experience to stay calm. Okay, Paul, let's start by getting you cleaned up. With that, I opened the windows to let in some fresh air and quickly changed both of their diapers. Wow, you're good at this. Grace complimented me, but Paul just turned his head away without a word. I'll go make you some lunch. As I was leaving the room, Paul spoke up. Don't forget the bourbon. Paul! Don't mind him, Emily. You stay out of this. As their argument carried on behind me, I thought to myself, what has my life turned into? Of course, I didn't resent the act of caregiving itself. But these tasks were things anyone could do. It didn't have to be me. If this had required specialized medical care, my skills would have been useful. But that wasn't the case here. Thinking about it only deepened my regret over quitting my job. I prepared soft-cooked rice and easy-to-digest foods. Naturally, I didn't serve any bourbon. Lunch is ready. When I brought their meals into the room, they were still arguing. If he hadn't insisted on using the stairs that day, none of this would have happened. Excuse me? You were the one who wanted to go shopping, so I went with you. You're the one who didn't want to use the elevator. Don't blame me." Their argument grew so heated that they seemed to forget I was even there. I'd seen plenty of arguments like this in the hospital, but it was far sadder to see it happening between family members. All right, lunch is served." I clapped my hands twice to grab their attention. The sharp sound echoed through the room, and both of them turned to look at me. "We're in the middle of a conversation. Don't interrupt." "Paul, Emily's just trying to help." "What's that supposed to mean? Are you saying I'm the bad guy here?" My intervention was in vain. They went right back to arguing. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore and raised my voice. "Enough already. What's the point of all this fighting? I went to the trouble of making lunch, so let's eat before it gets cold." Grace nodded apologetically, while Paul grumbled but finally started eating. Watching them slowly lift their trembling hands to eat made my heart ache. Once they finished eating, I started cleaning up. Afterward, I helped them brush their teeth, massaged Paul's back, and moved on to the next task. From handling their hygiene to assisting with baths, the 12-hour day disappeared in a blur. Once they were asleep, I finally headed home. When I walked into the house, it was dark. John's shoes weren't there. He wasn't home yet. It was a little past 10 p.m. "Oh, right. He said he'd be late tonight." I took a quick shower and decided to turn in early. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of the front door opening. Checking the time, I saw it was just past 5 a.m. It was way too early for work, so I went downstairs out of curiosity. I heard John's voice. "Oh, hey, Lana. I just got home. Last night was amazing." It sounded like he was on the phone, and he mentioned a woman's name that I had never heard before. It certainly wasn't a work call, especially at this time in the morning. I froze on the stairs and strained to hear more. "My wife? Oh, she's passed out from exhaustion." "There's no way I love her. You're the only one for me, Lana." "Don't worry. She has no idea about us." Hearing those words hit me like a freight train. John wasn't even trying to be discreet, and his words left no doubt. He was having an affair. As John headed to the bathroom, I slumped down onto the stairs, unable to move. That day, I went to his parents' house as usual, but my spirits were completely crushed. "Oh, Emily, you look so tired today." Grace seemed to notice right away. "What? You're worn out from this little bit of caregiving?" Pathetic. Paul's harsh words didn't even register with me today. I swallowed my emotions and focused on getting through the day. As I was wiping Paul's body with a towel, he suddenly cried out, "Ow, that's too hot. What are you doing?" I immediately realized my mistake. I had used a towel that was hotter than usual. "I'm so sorry." Paul lashed out, but all I could do was apologize over and over. "If you don't want to be here, then leave. I don't need someone like you taking care of me." "Emily, is something wrong? You seem upset." Grace's kind words broke through my emotional dam. I told him everything. John's affair, the lack of love, and how I felt completely betrayed. "Well, I'm sorry to say this, but maybe it's because you didn't try hard enough, Emily." "Exactly. There's no way John would do something like that." I was stunned. After putting everything I had into caring for them, not only did they refuse to believe me, but they were blaming me. All I could say was, "I see." After that, I finished the day's caregiving in a daze. Just as I was about to leave, Paul's doctor called. I'm calling regarding the test results, and it looks like surgery will be needed. I see. We'll need to act quickly. As a former surgical nurse, I immediately understood the gravity of the situation. I decided to head home and tell John about it. When I arrived home, there it was again, a pair of women's shoes at the entrance. And of course, they weren't mine. Inside, I could hear John laughing and talking with someone. John, you know that if I didn't work the front desk, I never would have even met you. You're always so good at hitting me when it hurts, aren't you? I pulled out my phone and quietly started recording their conversation. So, when are you leaving your wife? Maybe the next time she talks back to me. She's nothing more than my parents' caregiver now anyways. So that means I'll be your new wife, right? What else would you be? After recording everything, I calmly left the house and hailed a taxi. My destination? A nearby private investigator's office. I explained the situation, handed over the recording, and requested a full investigation. We'll make sure to gather everything you need. They advised me to act like nothing had happened, so instead of going home, I spent the night at a nearby internet cafe. For the next week, I continued my caregiving routine as usual. A week later, I got a call from the investigator and went to hear the results. They showed me photos of John flirting with Lana at her desk and videos of them disappearing together into bars and clubs on multiple occasions. The investigation confirmed that John's mistress was Lana, a receptionist at the office building where he worked. She was 28, stunningly beautiful, and had a charm that I no longer felt I possessed. At that moment, I decided, I'm done with John's games. I was referred to a lawyer by the investigator and immediately started taking action. After finishing my caregiving duties that day, I returned home to find yet another pair of women's shoes at the entrance. Lana's. Perfect! I can settle everything tonight, I thought as I gathered my courage and opened the living room door. I'm home! John and Lana both turned to look at me startled. What the hell? Don't just barge in like that. What's going on? You said that Emily wasn't supposed to be back yet. Watching their panicked reactions, I calmly spoke. Sorry to burst your bubble, but I've known about your affair for a while now. John's shock quickly turned to indifference as he pulled a piece of paper from his bag. Here, divorce papers. All you have to do is sign, and we're done. I was momentarily caught off guard, but quickly realized this worked in my favor. This must be Lana, right? I suppose it's nice to finally meet you in person. As I said her name, they both began to panic even more. How do you know her name? Your morning calls, the little rendezvous you had here a week ago. I recorded it all. My words left John pale, and Lana visibly shaken. That's impossible. Believe it or not, I hired a private investigator. Everything's documented. I told them that I had all the evidence I needed. I'll gladly agree to the divorce, but I'll be claiming my fair share of alimony. John was speechless while Lana lunged toward me. This has nothing to do with you. I stepped aside calmly and added, You'll be paying damages too. You knew he was married and still pursued him. Lana collapsed to the floor in tears. John stood frozen wide-eyed, unable to say a word. Now let's get these divorce papers filed. Oh, and John, your mom's care level is going to increase. It seems her dementia is worsening. And your dad has a tumor in his brain. It's early stage, but he'll need surgery soon. After delivering all the necessary information, I began packing my things to leave. I only took my personal belongings, the furniture and appliances, all bought with John's money, weren't my concern. Once I finished packing, I turned back for one final word. We'll settle the rest through our lawyers. Goodbye. With that, I walked out of the house. 2 weeks later, the divorce was finalized, and I secured 80% of the alimony I had requested. I returned to work at the hospital, where I was actually appreciated for the work I performed, and was able to enjoy fulfilling days there once again. The hospital was as busy as ever, but even in the hectic environment, my heart felt much lighter than before. And it turns out that the chance encounters occur when you least expect it because I eventually met someone new, a man who truly valued and cared for me. On weekends, he would cook elaborate dinners for me, or we would go on long drives together into the countryside. And just recently, he proposed to me with a beautiful engagement ring, even though we'd only been together for a few months. But you just know when things are right, so I said yes, without a moment's hesitation. He even encouraged me to keep working, and I'm finally living a life full of happiness again. I'm confident that from now on, we'll be able to build a bright future together.